Hello and welcome to tonight's special. Now, we all know the cliche about the man who needs no introduction, which usually serves as a preface to a lengthy and tedious biography of same. Well, we are going to honour it and leave it at this. His name is Christopher Hitchens, and after some 11 books and about 8.5 million newspaper and magazine articles, he has written a memoir, Hitch 22. One of its highlights, the time he met newly anointed British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. They argued, now there's a surprise, given he was a columnist with the left-leaning New Statesman at the time, and when Hitchens bowed slightly to concede a point, which is also a surprise, Mrs Thatcher instructed him to bow lower. And if you, Mr Hitchens, would then take up the tale. I've marked it for you.
OK. She wasn't then Prime Minister. She'd just become leader of the opposition.
She was on her way.
She'd become, as you say, anointed. She was the leader of the Conservative Party, and it was generally thought by a lot of commentators that she was a shrill, right-wing, suburban, unelectable housewife. This is the mise en scène. And I thought, I think she's got some oomph. I think I should check it out. So
bow, Mr Hitchens.
We got into an argument about Rhodesia, as it then was, Zimbabwe, and I conceded the point, even though you'll be surprised to hear this, I was right and she was wrong. She'd argued so tenaciously, I just thought, all right, I'll give you this much.
Such a gentleman.
And bowed. And then she said, no, no, bow lower. And no, then she trilled, much lower. By this time, a little group of interested bystanders was gathering. I again bent forward, this time much more self-consciously. Stepping around behind me, she unmasked her batteries and smote me on the rear with the parliamentary order paper that she had been rolling into a cylinder behind her back. I regained the vertical with some awkwardness. As she walked away, she looked back over her shoulder and gave an almost imperceptibly slight roll of the hip while mouthing the words, "Naughty boy."
Apart from outrageous flirting, what was that about?
Well, what I'd thought as I trudged back across Westminster Bridge, this was at a reception in the Rosebery Room of the House of Lords, was this woman has sexual power, which is what I'd written in the first place that got everyone to write to me at the New Statesman and say, how could you? People were so upset that they thought she was an absolute hag and bag. And I thought, no, she's got something, perfect skin, for example, beautiful eyes, lovely hair. And she understands how many beans make 5, if you follow me. And I was sure of this. And so
sexy is what you said.
Yes,
sexy.
In a word,
you used the word.
In a word. The word I was trying to avoid. No, the word I was trying to imply. And so I thought, I'm sure I've just seen something rather phenomenal. And felt it, too. And so later, as she one by one took on all the pinstriped chaps who'd been running the Tory party till then, one by one just took them out, off the chessboard, put them back in the box, made herself master of the party, then mistress, I should say, of the country. Did I just say master?
We'll get to that.
OK. I asked for it. Well, anyway, I was sure and said to people, I can prove it. I'm not being clever after the event. This is a phenomenal person. She has charisma, and it's partly sexual.
You also said, which I thought was intriguing, that deep down, you said, in the rodent in your viscera was that you thought, conceded that in some matters she might be right. And you were a man of the left,
yeah,
so you were feeling the siren call even then.
Well, to give you an idea, I felt myself very identified with the left, with the workers' movement. But I knew that in the area of the economy where I worked myself, namely Fleet Street, the print and magazine and newspaper racket, craft, business, the trade unions were the most reactionary, the most corrupt, the most wasteful, and the most cynical outfit in what was already a very cynical, corrupt, wasteful business, Fleet Street.
Wasn't it fun?
Yeah, it was. I pity anyone who never worked in the world of Evelyn Waugh's scoop and saw old Fleet Street at its worst. You know, when the printing presses, at the evening when they started to run, it was like the engine room of the Titanic, and all the vans going out through the fog to tell heaps of sensational lies to an eager public. And they paid me for being part of this, and it was wonderful. But for an idealist and someone who believed in the working class and in the socialist movement, I couldn't close my eyes to the fact that the unions were like a waterfront, mobbed up lot. So I thought, well, she's right about that bit. Yeah. But it wasn't kosher to say so.
But it is so interesting, and we'll come to this later, but in your mutation, your transformation...
Couldn't we say evolution? I'm not a mutant.
Oh, all right. Pupation, I think, is one you use at one stage.
You say the sweetest things.
From the left to moving to, I know you don't like to use the word right, but to a champion of the cause of American democracy, among others. But it started so early.
Well, I had...
Were you always a rat in the ranks?
Well, I had one advantage and one disadvantage. One, I'd been brought up in a very bleakly conservative context. My father was an officer in the Royal Navy most of his life. Extreme patriotism, extreme English nationalism, more than British nationalism even. Very fearful attitude to the people below you. The ghastly, unwashed, toiling masses who were to be feared, and then a slightly too deferential attitude to the people above you, the middle class you hoped to join and the upper class who ran things. And I found all that perfectly repulsive when I was a kid, and understood, because I knew it so well, I knew why people were Tory and I knew why I wasn't one. So that gave me an advantage as a socialist. I understood what the Tory mentality was. So it can be a terrible fate to be condemned to see both sides of every question.
But fortunately, you always decide to come down heavily on one or the other. Well,
no, sometimes on both.
Progressively?
Yeah, well, yes, because dialectics is the interpenetration of opposites, if you pardon the expression.
And who'd have thought...
And the resulting synthesis, which is the essence of the Marxist theory.
While enormously taken and laughing like a drain at the picture of you feeling the slap of firm government when it came to Margaret Thatcher, I do think one of the great elements in your memoir is that opening photograph of the writer as a young boy in a romper suit.
It's the best dressed I've ever been.
Quite beautiful, yes. Very right. Tell us about your mother. She was very different.
Mama, yes. I called her Yvonne to myself, and I decided to do it in the memoir. That's what her friends called her, and everyone else was called Jean or Ethel or Marjorie or something. I'd nothing against that, by the way, in case they knew. But Yvonne had something exotic to it, and it put her, a little bit more refined than the naval officers' wives, the sturdy types who were brought up. And she had a bit of fashion sense. She was very pretty. And she was very frustrated because there was no money, and it was post-war Britain was very austere, very bleak. But she was always trying to inject a dash of colour into things.
You write about her very generously, and it's like the sun does literally shine. All the colours are there when you write about Yvonne. The commander gets a much tougher treatment from you.
Yeah, well, the commander was grey.
Yeah. And boring, you said. I mean, I think you used boring, dull.
He had all the virtues of coming from a Baptist, Calvinist family in Portsmouth. His father was a teacher in a quite rough school in the dockyard area. No music, no entertainments on Sundays, thrift, continence, all of this. Makes for some virtues, but it can be a bit dull.
The great drop that you put in the first few chapters is when your mother ran off with a defrocked clergyman.
Yes.
And
a spoiled priest. Yeah.
A spoiled priest. And you were called to retrieve her body when she was found dead in Athens. Perhaps you could talk a bit about that.
Well, yes. Their marriage dried up. I knew that when I was quite young. They kept it going because that's what you did in those days, in that class. Divorce was still quite scandalous. When she told me she had a boyfriend, I'd already more or less guessed that she did. And I said to her, darling, I called her Yvonne sometimes. Yvonne, you're not going to tell me that you've stayed with my dad for the sake of my brother and for the children. I was thinking of saying that to her. And as I was trying to think how to phrase it, she said, well, I didn't do it because we stayed together for your sake. And oh,